The dim glow of neon signs flickered through the grimy windows of the rusted tap, casting erratic shadows across the worn wooden floors. It was a Friday night in downtown Atlanta, the kind where the air hung heavy with the scent of spilled beer, cigarette smoke, and unspoken tensions. The bar was a relic of older times, peeling wallpaper adorned with faded posters of country legends, a jukebox in the corner crooning twangy melodies that seemed out of place in the city's bustling heart. Patrons huddled in clusters, locals nursing their drinks, a couple arguing in low tones, and a group of friends laughing over a game of pool. But in one shadowed booth, the atmosphere was already souring. Officer Rick Jenkins sat slumped against the cracked vinyl seat, his uniform traded for a rumpled flannel shirt that barely concealed the bulge of his off-duty holster. His face was flushed, eyes bloodshot from the half-dozen whiskeys he'd downed. Beside him, his two buddies, fellow officers Dalton and Ramirez, exchanged uneasy glances. They were off the clock, meant to unwind, but Jenkins had a way of turning relaxation into confrontation. His temper was legendary in the precinct, a string of complaints for excessive force, racial profiling, and bar brawls that somehow never stuck. Tonight, the alcohol had amplified his grievances, turning whispers into snarls. Across the room, Malik Carter stood at the bar, his broad shoulders relaxed, but his posture impeccable, a habit forged in the fires of SEAL training. He was tall, over 6 feet, with skin the color of rich mahogany and eyes that held the steady calm of someone who had stared down death in distant deserts. His twin brother, Marcus, sat nearby, nursing a beer. They were identical in build and features, save for Malik's neatly trimmed beard that gave him a slightly more rugged edge. Both were dressed casually, dark jeans, button-down shirts, but there was an air of quiet authority about them that turned heads. Malik was Captain Malik Carter, a decorated U.S. Navy SEAL, fresh from a classified op in the Middle East. Marcus was Captain Marcus Carter, commander of Atlanta's Tactical Police Division, a role that demanded precision and unflinching resolve. The brothers had chosen this bar for its anonymity, no flashy crowds, just a place to reconnect after months apart. Their childhood in Baltimore's rough streets had taught them resilience, but service had honed it into something unbreakable. Tonight was supposed to be simple: beers, stories, laughter. But trouble had a way of finding them. Jenkins' voice cut through the murmur like a jagged knife. "Look at those two over there," he slurred, jabbing a finger toward the twins. Dalton sighed, rubbing his temples. "Rick, ease up. They're just having a drink." But Jenkins wasn't listening. His prejudice, buried under layers of denial, bubbled up with every sip. Malik felt the stare, but ignored it, handing the bartender cash for their drinks. Marcus, ever the protector, glanced over, his jaw tightening. "Ignore him," Malik murmured, sliding back into his seat. But Jenkins wasn't done. He stood, swaying slightly, and ambled over, his boots thudding heavily on the floor. "Hey, fellers," Jenkins drawled, leaning against their table uninvited. "You sure you're in the right spot? This ain't no hip-hop club." The bar quieted a notch, eyes darting their way. Malik met his gaze evenly. "We're fine right here, officer." Jenkins' eyes narrowed. How did he know? The badge wasn't visible, but Malik's instincts were sharp. Jenkins laughed, a bitter sound. "Officer? Smart guy, huh? Yeah, I am. And I don't like your attitude." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "We don't have an attitude. We're trying to enjoy our evening." The tension thickened, like storm clouds gathering. Jenkins' hand hovered near his hip, fingers itching. It escalated in seconds, a shove from Jenkins into Marcus's shoulder, hard enough to spill his beer. Marcus didn't budge, but his eyes flashed. "Back off," he said, low and controlled. Jenkins' face twisted in rage. "You threatening me?" And then, the unthinkable. He yanked his gun from the holster, the metal glinting under the low lights. "Don't you move!" Jenkins yelled, his hand trembling, the gun aimed straight at Malik's chest. The bar erupted in chaos. People froze in mid-motion, glasses halfway to lips. The jukebox droned on, a slow country ballad about lost love, its melody mocking the terror unfolding. Malik stood still, hands raised slowly, palms out, his heart rate barely spiked. Years of SEAL missions had trained him for worse. "Officer, calm down. You're drunk. Put the gun down." His voice was steady, almost soothing, like diffusing a bomb. "Shut up!" Jenkins snapped, spittle beading on his forehead, dripping down his temple. The alcohol had stripped away any semblance of reason, leaving only raw fury. Marcus stepped forward incrementally, one hand raised in a placating gesture. "Easy. Nobody wants trouble here." His mind raced, assessing exits, potential threats, the way a commander does. But this wasn't a tactical op. This was a bar, and the enemy wore a badge like his own. "Stay back," Jenkins barked, swinging the gun wildly toward Marcus now. The muzzle wavered inches from his face, cold steel brushing fabric. Marcus's breath slowed, his heartbeat thundering in his ears like distant artillery. "Put it down, officer. You're out of line." Training kicked in. De-escalate, survive. Jenkins' finger twitched on the trigger, the barrel shaking erratically. "Marcus," Malik said softly, his voice a lifeline in the storm. "Don't move." Another cop at Jenkins' table, Ramirez, whispered harshly, "Jenkins, please, stop. You're crossing the line." His hand reached out tentatively, but fear held him back. But it was too late. Outside, sirens wailed, growing louder, piercing the night. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls in erratic strobes. The chaos of the bar mixed with shouts, panic, and confusion, a symphony of dread. The rain had ceased, just as the sun dipped below Atlanta's skyline, leaving the streets slick and shimmering under the glow of street lamps and neon signs. Puddles reflected the vibrant chaos of downtown, towering office buildings, bustling pedestrians shaking off umbrellas, and the distant hum of traffic. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wet asphalt and street food vendors hawking hot dogs and pretzels. Malik Carter strode purposefully along the sidewalk, his twin brother Marcus matching his pace. They were a striking pair. Tall, muscular frames, honed by years of rigorous training, with identical high cheekbones and deep brown eyes that spoke of shared hardships and triumphs. Malik's beard was short and precise, a nod to his military life, while Marcus preferred a clean shave, fitting for his role in law enforcement. Both wore simple attire, dark jeans, fitted shirts, and leather jackets that concealed their builds, but not their confidence. Their story was one of perseverance. Born in Baltimore's unforgiving neighborhoods, where poverty and violence were daily companions, the twins had leaned on each other from the start. Their mother, a single parent, working double shifts as a nurse, instilled in them the value of education and discipline. Malik had joined the Navy right out of high school, rising through the ranks to become a SEAL captain, enduring grueling BUDS training and deployments that tested his soul. He'd led teams through sandstorms in Iraq, stealth ops in Afghanistan, earning medals for valor that he rarely mentioned. Marcus, meanwhile, had taken a different path, law enforcement. Starting as a beat cop in Atlanta, he'd climbed to commander of the tactical division, overseeing SWAT operations and high-stakes negotiations. His days were filled with strategy sessions, training drills, and the weight of protecting a city that often viewed him with suspicion because of his skin. Tonight was a rarity, a shared night off. Malik was on leave after a particularly harrowing mission. Marcus had just wrapped a major bust. "Let's just have a beer and talk like old times," Marcus had suggested earlier, clapping his brother on the back. No uniforms, no badges, just brothers. They had chosen the Rusted Tap on a whim, a small, unassuming dive bar tucked between a pawn shop and a laundromat. Its faded sign promised cold beer and good company, and from the outside it looked harmless. Inside, The wood-paneled walls absorbed the dim light from hanging bulbs, and the air was thick with the aroma of aged whiskey, stale smoke, and fried bar snacks. Patrons dotted the space, a group of construction workers at the pool table, clacking balls with laughter, an elderly couple sharing a basket of wings, and in the corner booth, Officer Rick Jenkins and his cronies. Jenkins was already deep into his cups when the twins entered. His history was a patchwork of red flags. Born in a small Georgia town where old attitudes lingered, he joined the force, seeking power, not justice. Complaints piled up, rough arrests of minorities, verbal abuse, but connections kept him afloat. Tonight, with Dalton and Ramirez, he was venting about the job, his words slurring into rants about those people ruining the city. As Malik and Marcus settled at a high-top table, heads turned subtly. Two tall, sharp-dressed black men, exuding quiet confidence, stood out in this mostly white, blue-collar crowd. Jenkins' eyes locked on them immediately. "Look at that," Jenkins muttered, loud enough to carry. "Two suits walking in here like they own the damn place." Dalton, a lanky man with a mustache, sighed deeply. "Let it go, Rick. They're just customers." Ramirez, shorter and more reserved, nodded his agreement, sipping his soda. He was the designated driver, but Jenkins couldn't let it go. His pride, bruised by a recent demotion threat, mixed with the alcohol like gasoline on fire. When Malik approached the bar to order, "2 drafts, please," Jenkins smirked and called out, "Hey, brother, you sure you're in the right place?" Malik glanced over, offering a patient smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, just getting a drink, same as you." He paid and turned away, but Jenkins pressed on. "Didn't think your kind liked country bars," Jenkins said, his tone louder, drawing uncomfortable glances from nearby patrons. The jukebox shifted to another tune, but the words hung in the air. Marcus turned slowly from his seat, his tone measured but firm. "What's your problem, man?" He could sense the undercurrent, the racism veiled as banter. "No problem," Jenkins shrugged, his smirk fading into a scowl. "Just saying, some folks should know where they fit in." The bartender, Rick, a balding man in his 50s with a tattooed arm, cleared his throat nervously. "Everything okay here, folks?" Malik nodded calmly. "All good." He returned to the table, sliding Marcus his beer. "Not worth engaging," he whispered. But Jenkins stood, unsteady on his feet, and sauntered closer. "What's your name, huh? You look military, or maybe just pretending?" The smell of whiskey wafted strongly. Malik exhaled slowly, maintaining composure. "I've served. That's all you need to know." "Oh yeah?" Jenkins leaned in, invading space. "And what did you serve? Drinks or time?" A few chuckles rippled from nearby tables, emboldening him. Marcus's hand tightened around his glass, knuckles whitening. Malik touched his brother's shoulder gently, a silent signal. Not worth it. But Jenkins stepped even closer, the tension coiling like a spring. "You think you can talk down to me in my bar?" Jenkins' voice rose. "It's not your bar," Marcus retorted sharply, his patience fraying. Jenkins' face twisted in mockery. "You saying I don't belong here?" "I'm saying," replied Marcus evenly, "that respect goes both ways." Jenkins laughed derisively. "Respect? From you? You people think everything's about race, don't you?" The word "you people" landed like a slap, silencing the bar momentarily. That was the spark. The tension snapped, leading to the shove, the gun, and the chaos that followed. The shove came sudden and forceful, Jenkins' palm slamming into Marcus's shoulder, sending ripples through his beer. Marcus didn't flinch, his body rooted like an oak. Years of tactical training had prepared him for physical confrontations, but this was different. A fellow officer, drunk and unhinged, in a civilian setting. "Don't," Malik warned softly, his voice a thread of calm in the rising storm. The bar had quieted to a hush, all eyes riveted on the unfolding drama. The pool players paused mid-shot, cues hovering. The elderly couple exchanged worried whispers. Jenkins pulled open his jacket slightly, flashing the badge clipped to his belt like a talisman. "See that? You mess with me, you mess with the law." His eyes gleamed with false authority, the alcohol fueling his delusion of invincibility. Malik's tone hardened, cutting through the haze. "You're drunk, officer. Sit down before you do something stupid." He scanned the room subtly, exits blocked by gawkers, no immediate weapons in sight, except Jenkins. But Jenkins's ego, fragile and inflated, couldn't tolerate the command, especially from men he deemed inferior. "You threatening me?" he barked, his hand diving into his jacket. In a blur, the gun was out, pointed erratically. Gasps echoed through the bar. People ducked behind tables, scrambled toward walls. A young waitress dropped her tray, bottles crashing. The jukebox persisted, its cheerful country riff clashing with the terror. "Don't you move," Jenkins yelled, the weapon trained on Malik once more. The cycle repeated, the trembling hand, the sweat, the roars of defiance. Dalton and Ramirez pleaded again, but their words fell on deaf ears. The sirens outside signaled the end of this nightmare, or the beginning of revelation. The door burst open with a crash, admitting a rush of cool night air and a squad of uniformed officers, weapons drawn and faces set in grim determination. "Drop your weapon!" the lead sergeant bellowed, a burly man named Hargrove, his voice booming with authority. Jenkins whirled, confusion etching his features. "I'm one of you!" he protested, the gun still in his grip. "These guys, they were threatening me!" Hargrove's eyes flicked to the twins, assessing. Malik, hands still raised, slowly reached into his inner jacket pocket, ignoring Jenkins' frantic yells. With deliberate care, he withdrew a small ID wallet, military-grade leather embossed with gold. Commander Malik Carter, U.S. Navy SEALs. He held it open, the credentials gleaming under the lights. The room plunged into stunned silence. Murmurs rippled as patrons craned to see. Marcus followed suit, flipping open his own badge with a flick of his wrist. Captain Marcus Carter, Tactical Police Division. The badge's shield caught the light, a symbol of irony in the chaos. Every cop in the room froze, weapons lowering slightly. Jenkins' gun hand sagged, his face draining of color. "Wait, you're..." he stammered, the reality crashing down. Malik's voice was ice-cold, devoid of the earlier calm. "You were about to shoot a SEAL commander and a police captain because of your pride and your prejudice." Hargrove moved swiftly, grabbing Jenkins' arm and wrenching the gun free. "You're done, Jenkins," he growled, cuffing him roughly. Dalton and Ramirez stood aside, heads bowed in shame. The bar's patrons stared, mouths agape, stunned, speechless at the twist. News spread like wildfire. By morning, body cam footage from the responding officers, coupled with bar security cams and dozens of witness statements, hit social media and local news outlets. Headlines screamed, "Off-duty officer pulls gun on two black men, unaware they're military hero and top cop." Viral videos showed the standoff, the revelation. Jenkins' pale face as cuffs clicked. The Atlanta Police Department scrambled into damage control mode. Press conferences were hastily arranged, with the chief denouncing the incident as unacceptable and promising a full investigation. Internal affairs descended like hawks, poring over Jenkins' record, uncovering a pattern of bias that had been ignored too long. Jenkins was suspended immediately pending review, then terminated within days. His partners, Dalton and Ramirez, were placed on administrative leave, their complicity in not intervening sooner under scrutiny. But for Malik and Marcus, the aftermath was more personal. In the sterile confines of the inquiry room, a bland office with fluorescent lights and stacks of paperwork, the brothers sat side by side. Malik, in his dress uniform now, spoke first. "I've faced enemies overseas, insurgents, ambushes, the unknown, but I never thought I'd have to face this in my own country from someone wearing the same badge as my brother." He detailed the events, his words precise, like a mission debrief. Marcus, beside him in his commander's attire, added firmly, "He could have killed us both. And for what? Skin color? Ego? This isn't just misconduct. It's a betrayal of the oath we all take." The board members, seasoned investigators, shifted uncomfortably, offering no rebuttals. Weeks later, charges were filed: reckless endangerment, official misconduct, hate-based harassment. Jenkins resigned in disgrace, his career in ruins. Whispers in the precinct spoke of lawsuits, settlements, but the twins sought justice, not vengeance. Therapy sessions followed, mandatory for Marcus, voluntary for Malik. They talked through the trauma, the gun's barrel, the racial slurs, the what-ifs. "It could have been any black man," Marcus confided one night over coffee. "We were lucky. Our badges saved us." Malik nodded. "But luck shouldn't be required to survive a beer." Months later, under a clear Atlanta sky, Malik and Marcus stood outside the rusted tap, now under new management. The bar had been revamped, fresh paint, inclusive signage, and community events advertised in the windows. A small plaque near the entrance read, "Respect is not a privilege, it's a duty." It was unveiled in a quiet ceremony, attended by locals and department reps. Marcus gazed at the plaque, hands in his pockets. "You think it'll change anything?" His voice held a mix of hope and skepticism. Malik smiled faintly, the beard framing his expression. "Maybe not everything, but it's a start. We keep pushing, on the field, in the streets." They stood in silence as the city lights shimmered around them, traffic humming softly. No guns, no anger, just quiet understanding and a bond stronger than fear, forged in fire and unbreakable.